This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace.
Last year, I went through many different life changes. I needed to take a pause and examine how I was feeling in the inside to better show up for the ones who need me to be my best version of myself.
When you're navigating life's changes, Talkspace can help. Talkspace is the #1 rated online therapy, bringing you professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatry providers that you can access anytime, anywhere.
Living a busy life, navigating a long-distance relationship, becoming a first-step father, Talkspace made all of those journeys possible. I could speak with my therapist in the office. I could speak with my therapist in the comfort of my home. I was never alone.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Emotionally unavailable.
Okay, well, it's so nice to meet you. Usually how I do things is I kind of read back over before we meet, and I just go, where do I want to start? So because of the work you do, which I really feel like is so important, but also so similar to some of the messaging that I'm pretty passionate about, I really wanted to start with what drew you to this work.
Well, I would say that it's been coming on for decades. So I was brought up, originally in the Catholic Church, and then as a 6 or 7 years old, my mother became disillusioned with the Catholic Church, and she was exploring alternative religions and beliefs and things like that. So I was exposed to that searching at a young age.
Wow.
And nothing wrong with, the church. It didn't work out for her. So, I remember as a kid, hanging out with the Hare Krishnas and then hanging out with the witchy crowd and just as a kid.
I literally can't even imagine seeing that through a child's eyes, truly.
My mother was such a hippie.
I love that so much. Seriously. I cannot explain enough how much that makes my heart happy.
But what that did is that gave me, as I was older and into my late 20s and early 30s, when I started feeling a void, an emptiness in my own life, I started searching and trying to find my own path.
Mm-hmm.
And that gave me the confidence to go searching.
Yeah.
And went to a lot of retreats, went through rebirthing processes. And,
oh my God.
Yeah, for real. So that was a thing back in the 80s, right?
Wait, can I ask you, was it the whole pillowcase thing? Or
I don't remember.
Over you?
The pillow was over me and blankets. And I remember thinking, I'm going to suffocate in here.
Yeah, I saw a documentary about this.
It was, yeah. And you're fighting your way out. And
yes.
Very traumatic.
God, I'm so sorry to laugh at this traumatic experience, but I've never met anyone who's actually gone through it. And I remember watching the documentary being like, and this was before I did any sort of inner child work or anything. So I was very separated from all the things I do now. So it was a very wild concept. I still think it's wild, but some form of rebirthing maybe is a little more appropriate. But that, I was like, holy hell. So to meet someone who actually went through it.
It was, I remember being pretty terrified at one point and thinking,
I'm sure.
I'm going to die inside all of these blankets and pillows and just literally fighting my way out.
Yeah, well, people did die. That's why there's a documentary about it.
Yeah, that was my takeaway from that experience. But it also, those retreats also started me to have more awareness. And I was doing that after my first marriage to an alcoholic, and just looking at myself and what was my part in that. And yeah. I was very clear, both my grandfathers were alcoholics, my father, my stepfather, my first husband. And at that point, I was like, I'm done. But it was going through those situations that brought me to where I am now. it didn't end there because I kept exploring. And I think the woman that had the most impact on me, I met in my late 30s. She's passed away since then. And I don't think she called it rebirthing, but I remember telling her about the experience. And she goes, there's gentler ways to do that. Yep.
You're like, I figured that trauma wasn't the only route for that.
Right. And keep in mind, at the same time, I'm growing in my career and very pragmatic, very corporate America. Spent years in corporate America.
Traditional structures. Yeah.
One of the things that appealed to me with Sue when I met her is that she had come from a similar experience and from the Midwest. So she had a very strong, pragmatic outlook. Like there needs to be a balance. She's a little bit more woo-woo than I am, but a little bit of woo is okay. And exposed me to some things that I still practice today and really had the most positive impact on my spiritual awakening, my awareness. And then I met a man who is a covert narcissist, had no idea, couldn't even comprehend what that was. And 11 years. I spent 11 years, and I'm grateful to have escaped with my life.
Yeah.
And during that time, he was very poo-pooing of, my mindful journaling, which is what I wrote my first book about, meditation, awareness, just anything that very practical, and also, I don't want to say encouraged me, but made me question. More.
Right. I was about to say, think for yourself. Yeah.
And keep in mind, at this point, I'm a VP. I'm, a very confident in my job. But over the years with him, I became less confident in my personal life. Work was my escape. Work was how I felt powerful.
External validation there.
Right.
Yeah.
And yet, when I was at home, literally the last couple years we were together, I had alerts on my phone that went off 4 times a day to remind me to keep my mouth shut when I was around him.
And see, this just makes me think that while you're succeeding and doing so well at work and it's your escape, whether you're conscious of it or not, it's also going to contribute to some heavy imposter syndrome because your life is so incongruent. You're wearing masks upon masks at work to cover up the fact that you feel like you don't have a single clue what you're doing in your personal life. And also, you feel like shit about your personal self because this dude's, feeding into that. And so then it really starts to affect how you're showing up at work. I mean, maybe not for you super outwardly, but I'm sure it really gave you some internal conflict.
Absolutely. And at one point, he talked me into quitting my job.
Of course he did.
It took a year. The gaslighting and just all of that was just off the chain. Lots of tears because I had never been financially dependent on anybody.
Right, which is what he wanted, yeah.
And after that, I was dependent on everything for him.
Yeah.
My money, I did have a job and I opened up a business, but he wouldn't let me have the business in my name because I didn't know how to run a business.
Ew.
But I was doing all the work. And I don't want to say that I wasn't questioning things at the time but at the same time, you're like, well, I'm with my partner and we're supposed to work together. And there's just, like I said, the gaslighting.
Probably a little too much questioning. A little rumination, not the right questions. Yeah. I mean, that's, first of all, yes, like what you're saying, being in a relationship with somebody who's strongly encouraging you to leave your support system, whether that's your job, your family, your friends, any of those things, usually all of them. Yeah, I mean, that's going to be what it is, but wow.
Like I said, I still, to this day, the concept of having no empathy or compassion for another human is so outside my scope of like, but my experience was very clear. But when the mask came off, hell no.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot easier to make decisions in a concrete kind of way. Because, first of all, it sounds like you really looked at things kind of concretely. You know, when you say things like logical and practical, that tells me that you're a person who likes, you know, right or wrong, good or bad, you know, left or right. And so it becomes one of those things where when there's the messy middle, it's like hard to see it. But then when you have these like real firm boundaries around what my no will absolutely be, that's different. But it also sounds like you were really struggling to connect with your intuition prior. Like you had really separated yourself from that.
Yes. But all of the things that I do now were things that I had either been doing or had been exploring and stopped doing because they were frowned upon.
Of course they were, yeah.
And so the mindful journaling that I do, like the first book that I wrote, I thought about that book for 17 years.
Wow.
Before I wrote it. It never left my mind. Yeah. I didn't speak about it. But I never stopped thinking about it. And the way that I journal mindfully is how I connect with my intuition, with my inner voice. And when I ended up in the hospital, that was the first thing I started doing. I still didn't know the scope of everything that had gone on, but I asked for a pad of paper and a pencil, and I started journaling because I was like, I know this will help me because I've done it in the past and I need to do it now.
Yeah.
And I would say that was really the beginning of where I got to where I am now, because that was 9 years ago. And, you know, it took me a little while. I was looking for anything and everything to help me, because people would say, what do you want? Like, what are you trying to do? And I said, I just want to be happy again.
Yeah.
I mean, I cried every day for 7.5 years.
Yeah.
And the first year and a half after I had extracted myself, I remember waking up a year and a half later one day and going, I didn't cry yesterday.
Yeah.
But I learned how to meditate in a way that works for me. And I found systems and meditations and things to help me kind of come to grips of the kind of emotional and mental abuse that I had been, you know, narcissistic relationship. And I was like, you know what? I want more of this. So I became a meditation teacher so I could create more meditations to help people that had been in similar situations. That was where that started.
Wow.
And I've been publishing meditations on Insight Timer now for 7 years.
Wow.
You know, a couple years later, I was like, I'm going to write that book that I've been thinking about, because if I don't write it now, when am I going to write it? And because my background is in marketing, I was like, well, I need a brand. I need, you know, like I put my marketing hat on, and all of that became just all of the things that I had been exposed to and learning my whole life came together at that point. It was interesting because when I would go to, you know, with Sue, when I was learning mindful journaling and things like that, and she said, you really need to be doing this work for other people. Keep in mind, I was, you know, I may have been a director level or maybe a VP level at that point, but I was just like, I couldn't even imagine what that looked like. Because the way she was doing it didn't resonate. Right? Didn't resonate with me. And then I realized a few years ago, I'm like, I have found my way now. I've found the way that works for me to share and to help others, because that's what feeds my soul.
Yeah. Well, I certainly resonate with that.
I I know that was a very long answer to one question.
No, that is exactly how I answer questions. So I was like right there with you. I love that you have so much insight too. And I just kept thinking too, like, it makes sense to me that he would poo-poo on your stuff because he really lacked consciousness. You know, like when narcissists are stuck, like he's like a 6-year-old kid. So having little manly tantrums on a daily basis. So like, of course, and I just think this is a good place to interject for anyone listening. Pay attention to what your partner says about the things you're passionate about. I'm not saying you have to like make any concrete decisions every few minutes about things like that. But like my husband doesn't believe in half the shit I do because I'm pretty woo-woo, but he's excited to hear about it. He's excited that I'm excited. You know, like it doesn't matter what it is. He's going to sit there and listen. And maybe he's just really good at acting like he cares, and that is fine. Like as pretend to care if that's what it takes. But like if your partner's criticizing the stuff that really makes you happy, that's an issue that you need to like clock a little bit because it does increase in magnitude. It starts with little tiny criticisms and then it becomes forbidding you to do those things first in their presence, then outside of their presence.
It wasn't even that it was forbidden. It was just the shaming.
It was so unsafe.
The shaming around like, why would you do that? Like, that's crazy. And so then you take it underground and then you're feeling guilty about doing that. And it just, I'm not stupid. It took 11 years for me to get to a crisis in order to allow myself to see the extent of what was going on. And there is this part of where I needed to acknowledge my part in it, and I'm not doing any victim shaming.
Yeah.
But I tolerated the intolerable for far too long.
Yeah.
And so there is a balance there. And yes, there is a very strong logical part of me, but there is also a part of me that has balanced with intuition and awareness and my spiritual side and finding that balance because
yes,
it's not one or the other. It's a whole lot of gray in the middle and the messy middle, like you were just saying.
Well, and I'm forgetting what I was going to say. That's good, though. That means I'm like super locked in with what you said. Shit. Oh, I know. Okay. Also, though, it makes sense to me that you would tolerate things for so long or even engage in a relationship with someone like him from the beginning because maybe he wasn't an alcoholic, but a thing that alcoholics have in common with this type of person is they all have a lot of narcissistic traits. Alcoholism doesn't just like, ooh, I just drink alcohol. They've gone to alcohol to escape, to numb, to whatever. There's just a lot of the familiar traits. Shit, I have like, 9 out of 10 of the narcissistic traits. I wouldn't label myself a narcissist, but I was an asshole. I really was. So that felt familiar to your nervous system. It makes sense to me that you were stuck in a little cycle of like, well, but if I show up differently, because that little girl in you was like, oh,
yes,
I know how to do this. I just got to be better. So no wonder you're a VP at a company because you know how to make everything perfect with overachieving.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing you just said. It's like, what do I need to do? What do I need to do differently? And that was reinforced because at one point I said, I'm not happy. We need to go to counseling. And we went a few times and here we're going to counseling. I'm falling to pieces and he's just sitting there like a bump on a log and
very much like, look at her, hysterical per usual. She chooses to take the most negative perspective on everything.
Right. And then it was, I don't have time to go. I have a meeting or booking meetings. He says, you're the one with the problem. You just go. So that was reinforced.
Oh my God, why do they always say that? Always. You're the one who needs the therapy.
Then I'm like, okay, is it me? Do I need to do this? And then when everything kind of came to a crisis, came to a head. I'm like, am I the narcissist? No.
Oh my God, yes. Yes. That is where they will get you too. But like, this is why it's important to, and I'm making this as a point of clarity because I am really guilty of this too. But so often, and now I see this a lot because of TikTok, we've got all this really good information. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have it, but we are a little oversaturated sometimes to where it will cause our focus to be them pathologizing them. Now everyone's diagnosing their partner as a narcissist, and that's fine. But that's not the point. The point is not them. It's me. How am I doing? Well, how do I feel when I'm around this person? What, physically, emotionally, what's coming up every time I'm in a room with them? How do they receive my excitement? How do they receive my anger? How do I feel in those situations? Not, I wonder why they do that, and trying to pathologize them so that we can fix them. And I feel you. I'm real guilty of it myself, but it's because that's the only thing our brains know how to do is to intellectualize. We got to feel. How do I feel in this situation? So I just want to remind the audience of that, because while I do want you to hear everything we're saying, and if this sounds familiar to your situation, then yes, like, heed the warnings, but also...
Hey guys, it's me. Emotionally Unavailable is produced 100% in-house by me with no team. So if this show has ever helped you and you want to give back, subscribe to the Patreon. There's several different levels with different benefits in each. Check the show notes and you can see what each tier subscription will get you. I also plan to there's also lots of fun things coming down the pipeline for the Patreon subscribers. So get in early. You can get a workbook, you can buy merch, you can do any of the things, and all of that supports the show to help it keep going. Really appreciate every single one of you. I love you so much, and I can't wait to see what we continue to do together.
So how do you feel in your relationship? Because maybe they're not a narcissist, but maybe they're not aligned for you either.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's the other thing, is that when that first happened, the therapist said to me, well, you're married to a narcissist. And I'm like, could you have shared that with me earlier?
Right.
He was like, well, you weren't ready to hear it. And I'm like, okay, fair, totally fair. And people would say to me like, oh, he's really self-centered, or he's really self-absorbed, or things like that. And I would make excuses.
You would?
But the thing is that I don't care anymore.
Right.
It's not my problem. I needed to heal. And of course, the question, I'm looking back at me because that's what we do, right? Like, am I right with all the gaslighting and the projection and all the rest of it? You're still in that place of self-doubt. And of course, like I do, I bought all of these books.
We all do it, honey. We all do it.
Right. Because I was like, I want to understand this. I want to understand where I've been, right? Because that's my logical brain, wanting to understand how I got to where I did. And when I'm reading some of these books, I just started sobbing, because I would be like, that was me, and that was me, and that was me. And again, it didn't start that way. It was, I liken it to like water torture. It's like, it's a drip every so often. You don't know when it's coming, but you know it's coming, and it comes, and it's just slowly eroding your self-confidence and creating more self-doubt. And you know what? My work is not focused on that anymore, because it's a part of who I am. It's a part of my experience. I'm not a therapist. I'm just a human that went through that experience. But the piece that I focus on is how to build your self-awareness, how to understand and listen to your own intuition and what is true for you. Doesn't mean it's true for anybody else. If it doesn't feel right, it ain't right.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Well, even I don't know if you're into human design at all.
I'm familiar with it.
So that's kind of where I'm at, is like, I know the terms, but I don't know a lot, but I'm a generator, and that was really helpful for me to learn, because it taught me that I respond. I don't initiate very well. I do initiate, but I need a template to work on. Like, in terms of sparking me, I'm like more of a, you say something and I'm like, yes, okay, great. Let me, make that, tweak or whatever. But it really helped me to understand that if it's not a hell yes, it's a no, because it's got to really light me up. And I have to wait for 24 hours before I decide that it really lights me up, because everything gets me excited. And then I'll be like, crash. And I'm like, oh, I don't really want to do that anymore. But I was thinking that with you, like connecting to your intuition, it really helped you to develop that confidence to say, and if I'm wrong, so what? Because that's where I've really had to come to too, is like, because I believe that we all carry these narratives, and one being, I'm not enough. We have the I'm too much, but we also feel not enough. And I also believe that we have to create our outer world to match our inner world. Have to. That's the way we survive. So if my inner world is walking around unknowingly saying I'm not enough, I'm going to create an outer world to confirm that negativity bias. But connecting to your intuition and understanding, I am enough. I love myself so much and I know I am enough, allows me to go, what's meant for me? If I make a mistake and I say no to an opportunity or no to an experience and it really was meant for me, it's coming back around. It's not some catastrophic thing, because that's where I used to be. Always in the which decision to make, which decision to make, which decision to make. And now it's like, I'm going to go with this. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. That's fine.
The universe will take care of it for you. Mm-hmm. The universe is going to bring you, and Sue used to say this, and I say it all the time now. This moment is right and perfect. Even when shit is going sideways, it is exactly perfect for you in this moment. You need this experience for something. Would I be doing this work had I not had that major crisis? I don't know. Who cares? But I did have that. And when you were talking about confidence, I feel like we all have it. We just have to hear it. And we have to listen. We talk about intuition. I know people who say, and I'll be like, how did you know to do that? And they go, oh, is my intuition. I'm like, how did you access that? Because my logical brain is
right.
My logical brain is not listening to the creative, intuitive. I mean, the logical brain has a bigger mouth.
Yeah.
Yells much louder, which is why I journal, which is why I meditate, have those moments, because I can't just sit there and go, oh yeah, my intuition says this. That I am not that person. I am not that person. I have to deliberately still take myself to a place where I can listen. And the other thing you bring up about making decisions, or I need to wait, things like that. I just did a live meditation session on Insight Timer on Wednesday night because it's the pink full moon. Okay, so we could go into the woo part of that, or we could just say the energy of this moon is about rebirth and renewal, which gets us all excited. Don't we get excited when we see all the trees budding and the daffodils popping out of the ground? But the meditation or the visualization that I walk through is you don't have to do it all.
Right.
Some of it you just need to let go. Focus on what matters. And
and don't you think that what matters is the thing that, one great way of listening to your intuition is the things that light you up, the things that just give you such peace and joy, or that feeling of abundance. That was kind of the first way I could really, I'm great. I've always been great about intuition about other people. But in terms of managing my own life, it was always catastrophic thinking. Always, always, always. And so when I learned to quiet the noise in my head, and the next step was connecting with myself, I had to start with, Do I feel happy when I think about doing that? And I mean, sure, anxiety is going to come up, and I also have to retrain my nervous system all the time to hold safely new opportunities and abundance and things like that. But my initial like, oh my gosh, that sounds freaking awesome, or that sounds terrible. Like, that's a great place to start.
Well, I mean, sometimes it's obvious, right? Like, I tell people I'm, going to be on a podcast interview, and they go, oh, do you have a podcast? And I'm like, hell no, I don't. I have a lot of respect for people who have podcasts because I got enough to do that I don't want anything more to do.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be on a podcast and to talk to somebody like you, but to have to organize another thing, no. So sometimes those things are really easy to figure out, right?
Right.
And sometimes they're not, because our logical brain, like I said, is very loud and mouthy and saying, well, this makes more sense. You should do this because this makes more sense. But there's something here that says, I'm trying to talk to you right now and tell you about this. So
exactly.
That's why building our awareness and allowing ourselves, because some things are not obvious.
No, and in fact, in that spirit of making sure our outer world matches our inner world, more often than not, your little logical brain is going to be feeding you a lie to make your outer world match your inner world. And I'm so grateful to myself, thank you, but like that I was willing to take that as a point of fact and work backwards instead of, because my lies felt very true. The things I did to push people away, all the things I did to keep myself safe, I felt very righteous in those decisions. Like, I was sure people didn't show up for me the way I showed up for them. I was sure nobody loved me as much as I loved them. I was sure that people just sucked at supporting me, and not that vulnerability felt really fucking scary to me, So I literally had to say, I believe this is true because I've heard it from science and I've heard it from the woo-woo community. So I'm going to believe it. But how am I doing this to myself? And I had to work backwards. And I do that all the time because that's my huge passion right now is teaching that particular subject. But I have to ask myself all the time, wait a second, because if it's not serving my highest good, it's a lie. So I have to know that, but there are ways to connect. But what's beautiful about your subconscious is it does retrain fairly, quickly. I won't say easily because you have to trudge through that stuff. But at least, once you start to introduce this information to it, the next time, very quietly, it'll say hey, remember we were going to stop and think about this? Remember you try to protect yourself from pushing people away? I lean into the quietness, but you're right. Oftentimes you're going to have to take a pause, and we're not comfortable with that because of our people pleasing. We're not comfortable with stepping away because we're used to just providing the answer to somebody right then. Yes, I can do that. Yes, I will do that. Yes, whatever to make you comfortable, because that's a part of people pleasing. And I've really had to learn how to. Because of the work I've always done, it's always been I worked in hospice for a long time. I worked in education. So I was pretty comfortable with I don't know the answer to that. Let me go get it. But in my personal life, I was not good at that. So that's been something I've really had to learn as a people pleaser or a reformed one to be I'm going to have to get back with you because I don't know. I don't know if I have the energy for that,
Yes. Well, it's easier for us to, hindsight is 20/20.
Yes.
And as we grow and have more experiences, it's easier to establish boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. And it sounds so cliche but as women, we are trained to be the caregivers and take care of everybody else and not need care ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to break that. But there was something you said earlier about like, we can train ourselves. And yes, we can. But the other thing is that we have to get through the uncomfortable parts. And that's where many people get stuck, is that if I'm building awareness, I'm shining a light on things that I may not be comfortable looking at.
Yes.
I may not be comfortable acknowledging that imperfect, perfect part of me. And if we get stuck there without the willingness to be, like I said, I had to accept my part, which was tolerating what I shouldn't have. That was my part. And I had to acknowledge that. It didn't take away anything from what he had done that was wrong. It just allowed me to sit in that uncomfortable place and say, okay, so I did that. How do I not do that next time? And what did I learn from that? But sitting in the hot seat with yourself, man, it's real easy to just, nope, not doing that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it took a lot for me to realize all the ways in which I victimized myself through my own little brain. Like, literally feeling like nobody loved me as much as I love them. I mean, all of the weird stuff I used to think. But it also, I think something that people don't acknowledge enough is the grief that you feel when you do, like, get through a lesson like that. I had to really, lean on my spiritual understandings, truly, to get through the pain of thinking, if only I had known this then. And not wanting to redo my entire history and understand how vital that history was for my present self and future self. But man, the grief of like the life I could have had if I had had this information sooner. It was quite a process. And then also just the shame that you can feel when you see all those patterns. Like, oh my God, I was disgusting. And now I'm so far past that. But I remember at first just being like, I have really hurt people, and I would never have thought that. I thought I was the best friend.
The shame. Absolutely. I remember my sister when all of the things blew up, and my sister was like, what is wrong with you? Why didn't you tell me all of this was going on for years? And I said, hold on for a second, sister dear, I love you, mean it. I felt so much shame because I knew in my heart I was putting up with what was insane behavior, and I was trying to manage it. Again, trying to fix everything all by myself instead of going to my support system, my family, my friends, and of course, getting some help to become more isolated from my husband, my ex-husband. That was certainly happening too. Again, we carry shame all the time.
Yeah.
There's always something. Like you were saying, oh, I could have done this better. No, that was in the moment, and I was doing the best I could in that moment. But it takes a lot of self-awareness and reflection and sitting in that place to where you can say that instead of blaming yourself.
Right. Yeah, because I had to really go, what information did she have at the time? Okay, there's no way that if she had the information you have now, that she would ever have made those decisions. Ever. Because who you are is so good. You've always been so good. So tell her what you've learned and forgive her for the things that she did. But also, I think it's so easy for us to carry shame about relationship stuff because it's the same as like the way we internalize the shame from our parents. We do that with our partners too. And most parents do this as well. We view these people as a direct extension and a reflection of us. And so if my spouse is a narcissist, what does that say about me? It doesn't actually say shit about you, except for that your nervous system is wired to believe that love is this thing. But otherwise, that doesn't say shit about you. He's a narcissist and you're you. But that's not the way we feel about it because we see ourselves as that extension and reflection.
Absolutely. And also our inability to set boundaries. I was great at certain boundaries when it came to business, when it came to career, when it came to my physical self.
Mm-hmm.
Great boundaries there. Terrific boundaries. The other stuff, my emotional boundaries, I don't want to say they weren't non-existent, but they were a little squishier.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that they were squishier, but certainly, and that comes from, again, watching our parents, watching our families, things like that. And we say, oh, I'm not going to be like that. And then somehow or other, we carry that. We carry that with us. And again, it's okay as long as we are willing to look inside and be aware, like, oh, I have this script in my head that tells me that love is painful, or, I'm never going to be loved because I'm not enough, like what you were saying at the very beginning. That whole thing, or, marriage is challenging, or there's always a compromise and there's always a betrayal. No, first off, there's never any absolutes.
Right.
But just, you never stop. If you stop looking inside, you might as well be dead. And I mean, maybe not, but like I stopped for years because I was afraid to. I was afraid of losing my family and losing my spouse and losing financial support at one point, right? Like, what am I going to do? I can't go back into the workforce. I'm too old. There's ageism. There's this, that, all the excuses, right? And we just have to give ourselves some grace and understand that, okay, I wasn't doing it then, but I'm doing it now. And sure, I'm going to look back to today and go, oh, I didn't actually see that day.
Yes.
It's constant. I love it.
It really is.
It makes life so fun.
I talk about that a lot, about how like the pattern's going to come back and you're going to get a deeper understanding and then you're going to move forward. No more like shaming yourself whenever you repeat a pattern. It's going to happen. You're going to have to learn the same lessons over and over, and it's going to be trickier and trickier to pinpoint that that's the lesson until you go, wait a second. That's that thing again. Oh my gosh. Okay, great. I know that. Yeah, okay. Because you just got to be open and flexible to the lesson.
Until the universe smacks you up the side of the head and you go, okay, I got it this time. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Well, I have loved this conversation. Tell us where we can find you.
My website, which is KatharineChestnut.com. I'm also very prolific on Insight Timer and YouTube. You can find all my meditations and talks and all of that in both of those places. And all my books, I have 4 now, are on Amazon.
Awesome. Well, and I'll make sure to include all your links in my show notes. And I just appreciate you. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. Okay, I'm going to press stop if you'll hang out for just a second.
Definitely.
Thanks for coming to Emotionally Unavailable. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, and share.
Emotionally unavailable.
All right, that's it from me. So make sure that you check out the show notes for links. And until next time, let's all just keep swimming.
INDEPE and cut.